Hey folks, Tom Norfleet with www.citizenshipquickly.com. Wanted to talk to you today about international investing. A lot of people, whether you're from Germany, from Switzerland, the U.S., or Italy, or whatever, want to know where they can invest for the cheapest internationally. You hear a lot about U.S. brokers, but what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of U.S. brokers don't have good fees. They might have real good fees for buying U.S. stocks, but they have awful fees in going international. Robinhood is a good example. Robinhood doesn't charge any fees to buy U.S. equities, but when you go international, their fees are real high. And this is where they get a lot of their money from, is bringing you in, charging you nothing for U.S. equities, but then they hit you on real high charges when you go abroad to different countries to buy equities like Italy, Spain, Hong Kong, Singapore. So what I've done is I've actually compiled a list of brokers, and these are the brokers that have the best rates internationally, not just in the U.S., but all over. And I've done a lot of research on this. I've spent a lot of time, and this changes periodically. So what's good today might not be good in 2 or 3 years from now. In fact, it won't be. It'll be constantly changing. And this video, I'm actually doing this as of January of 2020. So let's get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit on the best ones to go with. First of all, if you're a U.S. citizen, you can knock all of these out except for one. In fact, if you're a U.S. citizen, the only one as of right now that you can deal with is Interactive Brokers, and that is a U.S. brokerage company. And if you relinquish your U.S. citizenship, some people don't want to go with U.S. brokers. If you don't want to go with a U.S. broker, don't go with Interactive Brokers, because even if you go through the branch that's in the U.S., not U.S., but Hong Kong, that's run by a Hong Kong company, under a Hong Kong company itself, but it's a sister company of the one that's in the U.S. So if you're trying to get away from any sort of U.S. broker, Interactive Brokers is not going to do it, because the mother company is a U.S. broker. And I always tell people, if you want ultimate privacy, don't go with a bank or brokerage company that has any U.S. branches. In fact, this one doesn't have a U.S. branch. The main office is in the U.S. So that's something you have to look at. If it doesn't bother you, then that's fine. Their rates are very inexpensive. In fact, across the board, they're probably some of the cheapest rates that you'll find anywhere that I've checked on across the board. And they might not be the cheapest in every area. Like there are some areas that are cheaper in Europe, their Interactive Brokers is, but going across the board, they are probably the cheapest out there. One thing that is nice about Interactive Brokers, they don't charge safe custody fees. These are fees to hold your, basically I call it paying for dirt, because what you're doing is the bank is holding a separate, they're taking your ledger, your books, off their books and doing a separate ledger. So if the bank or brokerage company goes bankrupt, then your equities are safe, because they're off the bank's books, which is good. That's what you want. In the U.S., you got the Securities Investor Protection Corporation that insures up to a certain limit. But in this case, all of the equities are taken off the books. So, but that has nothing to do with cash, depending on where the actual brokerage company is domiciled, where they have rules and regulations as far as insuring certain amounts of cash. You would need to check into that, because that does change periodically. But Interactive Brokers is very inexpensive. Let's go over another one. Jaro. This is a new one, started back around 2013. Jaro and Interactive Brokers I would say are probably the two cheapest across the board. Jaro will not take U.S. citizens either. In fact, they've gotten real strict, because in the last year, they not only stopped, they would not take, but only from certain residents of EU countries, not even all EU countries, only certain ones. Now, they were taken from everywhere before, but then they changed that. And it's not just that, but they also, they used to take corporate accounts and trust accounts, and now they've stopped that, and they're making changes. Now, whether they're in the midst of these changes now, whether or not they will let trust companies or trust accounts and corporate accounts be set up. Time will tell. But neither one of those two charge safe custody fees. Those are fees basically, like I said, it's like paying for dirt. But you have a lot more fees when you go international, and they have to absorb those fees somewhere. But they found ways to do it evidently, because Interactive Brokers has been around for a long time. I'll give you two other ones that are real good. One is FSM1. That's Frank, Sam, Mary, 1-ONE. They're out of Singapore. The problem with this one that the Jaro and the Interactive Brokers does have that this one doesn't have is right now they're only working on 3 markets, and that's Singapore, Hong Kong, and the U.S. And the fees are real inexpensive. I won't go through the exact fee structure with you because it could change by the time you get it, but it's very inexpensive. I'll just give you a basic for FSM1. It's 0.08% of whatever you buy and sell in those markets. The other ones is a lot more complicated, and so I won't even get into those rates with the Jaro Interactive Brokers. But Interactive Brokers and Jaro across the board, you can go into a lot of different foreign markets that you cannot go with FSM1. Another one that's real good is Saxo Bank. They are their domicile is in Europe, and they will not take U.S. citizens. You would have to relinquish your U.S. citizenship to go with them. They do have inexpensive rates. They do charge a safe custody fee. It's 12 basis points, 0.12 of whatever the assets that you got that are in equities, not cash. They do have the best platform, in fact, of any of these, and there are a lot of advantages with Saxo Bank in that there are a lot of markets that, in fact, I would say of the markets that you can actually invest in, Saxo Bank and Interactive Brokers has probably the most extensive ones that you can go into. I would say also the platform to actually invest with Saxo is easier to deal with than Interactive Brokers, but they deal with all different types of investing there. I'm just giving it for equities. They also deal with contract for differences too, which are very risky to go into. But there are some alternatives too. Swiss Quote's another one. Strateo, Strateo is another one. They're both out of Switzerland. Strateo's got little to no safe custody fees. Swiss Quote has about 0.10 in safe custody fees. Their fees across the board are a little bit higher than the first 4 that I gave you. The problem with Strateo, they will not take corporate accounts. They won't take trust accounts. They'll only take individual accounts. So you have to take that consideration if depending on what type of account that you have set up. The things that you have to look at too is what is their fees to buy and sell. You need to consider also, is there a safe custody fee? Are there also dividend reinvestment fees or fees just to issue out the dividends? A lot of these companies will charge to actually issue out the dividends. See, a lot of people in the U.S. are used to a lot of freebies and handouts. When you go international, and it's worth going international because when the U.S. market gets really, really high, and you're getting a chance to buy equities really inexpensive overseas, that extra little high fee that you pay for is minute compared to the value that you can buy on the actual equity itself. So you have to take that consideration. And if the dollar is real high and you got other currencies are real low, you got to take that consideration because that's a double whammy if that currency comes back and the equity that's in that market too. So these are things that you have to consider. So let's look at a couple other things. Will they take trust accounts? Will they take company accounts? Will they take U.S. citizens? Most of brokerage and accounts in banks overseas will not take Even if you file the W-9 form, they don't want the hassle of dealing with U.S. citizens. What are their total fees? You really have to look across the board because there's a lot of hidden fees that you have to look at. The three big ones is the buying and selling, the distribution fees on dividends, to reinvestment of dividends, because there are some brokers that don't charge for reinvestment of dividends. Saxo Bank doesn't charge it. Neither does I think Interactive Brokers and Jaro. They don't have that option. You would have to. They don't have an automatic option on that, but that's getting ready to change. So I think you'll see that change for those two brokerage companies. But these are just some of the things that, and you need to decide also, is it easy to operate their platform? Because if you got a real confusing platform, remember you have to trade these online. If you're using a broker, then the fees are going to be a lot higher, and I wouldn't advise doing that. It's a lot easier dealing with an online broker, and then online where you're dealing with it online yourself, where you're excluding having a broker do the trades for you. That's a big key to this. So anyway, and also, do these brokerage companies, did they give you accessibility to a lot of different markets? Because you need that. You don't want just 3 markets. You want to be able to go across the board, a lot of different markets. The best ones for that by far are, with cheap rates, are Interactive Brokers, Jaro, and Saxo Bank. Folks, if you want to get your taxes to zero, close to zero, get some help. If it's not with our company, do it with somebody. If you're interested in doing this, contact us on our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com. We also deal with citizenship by investment. We can get citizenship as quick as 3 to 4 months. And if you got a question or comment, just put it below. And if you want new videos as they come out, just hit the subscribe button to the right of your screen. We'll get those out to you as soon as they come in. Look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care. Bye.